The Dallas Cowboys are staring down a heavy financial crossroads right now, calculating every single dollar on the payroll to keep this roster compliant without slamming the championship window shut. Starting with the raw roster math behind Dak Prescott between Joe Milton and Sam Howell, right before breaking down how Kenny Moore's sudden release in Indy hands our secondary an immediate veteran asset. But the real reason the national media is tearing into this organization today centers on a massive post-June 1 trade blueprint designed to salvage a ground game running on empty. We're dissecting an elite offensive weapon tied directly to an $18 million dead money reality that could completely alter the NFC power structure if Jerry Jones signs off on the cap hit. Can I ask for your help? Just leave a like. So many of you watch us daily and forget that thumbs up. It's a humble way to support and helps more than you know. Thanks a lot. Nobody's debating Dak Prescott's spot at the top of this depth chart. The real issue centers on figuring out who takes the snaps if the protection breaks down, because the insurance policy behind them is a massive variable right now. Tracking the transactions over the last 12 months shows exactly what happened. The front office traded for Joe Milton and then turned right around to hand Sam Howell a one-year agreement. That leaves 3 quarterbacks occupying active roster spots in the facility, forcing a hard personnel cut the front office can't defer forever. John Machota over at The Athletic published a clinical breakdown in his May 12th roster projection, concluding that keeping all 3 arms on the final 53-man roster is highly improbable. The way he evaluates the room, this backup competition is going to run straight through training camp and the preseason slate. But Milton enters the summer holding a noticeable structural advantage. The primary justification for Milton retaining his spot comes down to the tangible draft capital surrendered to acquire him. The front office parted with a 5th-round selection to bring him in, and with 2 years remaining on his rookie agreement, a 4-year contract totaling $4.2 million, the organization possesses clear financial incentives to protect the investment. Front offices despise cutting a player acquired via trade just 1 year later because it publicly highlights a miscalculation on their trade board. Holding Milton on his highly affordable rookie scale lets the organization justify the original trade capital. Milton also provides an unteachable physical ceiling that scouts constantly monitor. Logging a full year digesting the terminology grants him an operational comfort level within the scheme that Howell doesn't own yet. Discounting Sam Howell from this equation would be an error in evaluation. The former Washington Commanders starter brings legitimate, documented starting experience to the table, registering 20 total appearances with 18 formal starts. His output across those contests includes 4,139 passing yards, 22 touchdowns, and 23 interceptions, while hitting his targets at a 62.6% completion rate. The contractual data verified by Spotrac add a critical layer to the evaluation. Dallas signed Howell to a 1-year agreement worth exactly $2.5 million, with the entire base salary fully guaranteed. Guaranteeing that volume of compensation leads cap analysts to question whether the front office is considering carrying all 3 passers to avoid accelerating dead money onto the cap. Schottenheimer emphasized that Howell joined the roster with a clear objective, refining his mechanics under the offensive staff while competing for active snaps. Tracking whether that mechanical refinement allows him to leapfrog a player the front office already spent draft capital on serves as the central evaluation point for this position group. If Howell demonstrates superior processing speed during the preseason, the front office has to swallow its pride and accept the sunk cost on Milton's trade asset. While the front office weighs those cap implications, under center, a sudden defensive transaction out of Indianapolis directly impacts Dallas' secondary options on the open market. The Indianapolis Colts officially announced Thursday that they released veteran Pro Bowl cornerback Kenny Moore, severing a 9-year tenure after general manager Chris Ballard failed to secure a trade partner for the 30-year-old prior to the draft. Indianapolis actively marketed Moore across the league in recent weeks, attempting to attach draft compensation to offload his contract. But the trade market failed to yield an acquiring club. Watching a cornerstone defensive piece get released for zero return highlights the severe cash constraints impacting older defensive backs across the league. Indianapolis misjudged their trade positioning, and their forced cap casualty presents our front office with an immediate acquisition target. For Dallas, this transaction alters the secondary market significantly. Early offseason reports linked the front office to Moore's availability, and his transition to an unrestricted free agent allows the organization to negotiate a straight cash contract without relinquishing future draft assets. Adding Moore to the roster doesn't represent a developmental gamble or a rehabilitation project. It secures a highly decorated, highly graded coverage defender possessing a documented history of elite baseline production. Across 9 campaigns in Indianapolis, Moore logged 132 regular season appearances with 111 starts. His career metrics stand at 649 total tackles, 11.5 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, 68 passes defended, 21 interceptions, and 5 defensive touchdowns. Data verifying an impactful presence across run support, blitz execution, and ball production. Generating 21 turnovers and returning 5 for scores proves an elite capability to diagnose route combinations pre-snap. Furthermore, registering over 600 tackles demonstrates a willingness to set the edge and run support that pure coverage corners often lack. His statistical accumulation is highly notable considering his entry point into the league. Moore signed as an undrafted free agent in 2017 out of Division II Valdosta State University, entering camp with minimal probability of surviving final roster reductions, let alone securing multi-year extensions and Pro Bowl honors. If the front office executes a signing, Moore integrates into a secondary undergoing significant personnel turnover this spring. The current configuration relies on first-round rookie Caleb Downs, former Arizona Cardinals safety Jalen Thompson, and former Los Angeles Rams cornerback Kobe Durant. Deploying Moore in the slot allows the defensive staff to utilize Downs in a flexible safety role without forcing the rookie to manage complex interior route adjustments immediately. It constructs a layered secondary capable of matching diverse offensive personnel packages. Inserting Moore into that rotation delivers an immediate starting option immune to schematic pressure. Evaluating the explosive passing plays conceded by the secondary during the prior campaign makes acquiring a stable perimeter anchor highly logical for asset preservation. Because the front office already secured secondary depth during early free agency, the organization operates without baseline desperation during these talks. Maintaining organizational control allows Dallas to dictate the financial terms, establishing strict cap boundaries if ownership approves the contract addition. Entering negotiations without immediate roster desperation lets the front office walk away if Moore's representation demands premium guaranteed money. Securing that secondary stability remains the primary focus for the defense. Yet certain external analysts continue proposing highly inefficient trade scenarios for the offensive side of the ball. CBS Sports analyst Jordan Dajani proposed a scenario where Dallas acquires veteran wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins via trade, citing potential contract variables surrounding George Pickens' franchise tag as justification for securing veteran depth. The premise of Dajani's argument relies on the assumption that Pickens, who officially signed his fully guaranteed $27.3 million tender, will demand a trade rather than executing his assignments under a one-year structure. While contract standoffs occur, the current market dynamics indicate an extended holdout is highly improbable. Early off-season reporting indicated Pickens' representation tested potential trade markets to evaluate long-term contract willingness across the league. The open market, however, failed to generate acquisition packages meeting the front office's valuation. Consequently, the optimal financial decision for Pickens is clear: maximize target volume, produce elite efficiency tape, and enter the 2027 cycle as an unencumbered asset earning $27.3 million in the interim. The primary structural counter to acquiring Hopkins resides internally on the active roster. Evaluating Hopkins' recent metrics confirms a sharp decline in physical separation. Across 17 active contests with the Baltimore Ravens in 2025, he secured exactly 22 receptions for 330 yards and 2 scores. Entering his age 34 season prior to Week 1 introduces heavy statistical risk regarding his base efficiency moving forward. Contrasting Ryan Flournoy's ascending efficiency metrics against Hopkins' documented production drop makes this trade scenario entirely irrational from a financial and personnel standpoint. And you? If you were Jerry Jones, would you sign a big contract with Hopkins?
While internal development easily solves our perimeter depth, examining the backfield reveals an operational void where the front office may actually need to target post-June 1 trade markets. The front office extracted elite baseline output from Javonte Williams last season, observing the veteran compile the career-high 1,201 rushing yards across 287 total touches while executing critical blitz pickups. Accumulating that volume of hits carried physical consequences, as Williams managed a chronic shoulder issue down the stretch, forcing the staff to evaluate their usage models for the backfield. Subjecting a primary runner to nearly 300 touches guarantees physical degradation before the postseason tournament begins. Failing to secure a secondary backfield asset capable of absorbing early down punishment directly jeopardizes the durability of your starting back. Kristopher Knox of Bleacher Report published a trade architecture identifying Dallas as an acquiring destination for New Orleans Saints running back Alvin Kamara, structuring the transaction specifically around post-June 1 cap mechanics. The execution timeline centers strictly on financial compliance. Offloading Kamara prior to June 1 accelerates over $18 million in dead money onto the Saints' cap ledger, rendering an early agreement completely unfeasible. Processing the move post-June 1 splits the cap penalty, creating a scenario where New Orleans accepts minimal draft compensation to clear base salary off a roster undergoing structural transition. Accelerating $18 million in dead money destroys the club's active cash flow, ensuring New Orleans freezes negotiations until the June deadline passes. Once that charge splits, acquiring teams hold massive positioning to demand favorable trade terms from a motivated seller. New Orleans established their future backfield spending by signing Travis Etienne to a 4-year, $48 million agreement during free agency. The front office concurrently stacks Devin Neal, Kendre Miller, Audric Estime, and Ty Chandler on the active roster, a personnel surplus leaving zero financial justification for retaining Kamara's existing cap figure. Reports indicate Kamara expressed an explicit desire to conclude his career in New Orleans. However, evaluating whether the front office values tenure over clearing liquid base salary from a highly congested position group remains highly doubtful. For Dallas, evaluating a Kamara acquisition depends entirely on internal processing metrics for Jaden Blue. If the second-year runner demonstrates elite schematic retention during summer workouts and secures the staff's trust, the front office possesses zero financial incentive to surrender draft picks and cap space for a 30-year-old back. If that internal progression fails to occur, if Blue struggles to translate his raw athletic traits into reliable on-field efficiency, management will actively monitor available veteran trade inventory. Ultimately, the daily metrics generated during practice sessions will dictate whether acquiring Kamara transitions from media speculation to an executed contract. If internal options fail to execute consistent blitz protections, management must execute a veteran trade to protect Dak Prescott's blindside. Smash the like button if you demand a complete backfield overhaul before Week 1 kicks off, and subscribe right now so we can hold this front office accountable for every single cap dollar they spend.